After China repeatedly tightened its rare earth export controls, the anxiety in the United States has become increasingly visible. After all, about 70% of America's rare earth supply depends on imports, and nearly 90% of that comes directly from China. Some U.S. officials have even labeled China's export regulations as a form of, economic coercion. But recently, the U.S. seems to have spotted new hope in Brazil as an alternative rare earth supplier. Brazil holds more than 21 million tons of rare earth reserves, and in recent years, its government has prioritized the development of this strategic resource. Naturally, that has caught the attention of many Western companies. In an effort to reduce reliance on China, several American firms have already begun investing in Brazilian mines, hoping to establish new supply chains there. However, the situation took a surprising turn. Brazil now appears ready to refuse supplying rare earths to the United States and instead plans to export over 30,000 tons per year to China. This means Washington's plan to use Brazil as a way to break free from China's grip on rare earths has once again failed. So, why is Brazil unwilling to sell to the U.S., and why is it choosing to strengthen its rare earth cooperation with China? In June this year, the Brazilian Ministry of Mines launched a program called the Rare Earth Independence Plan, aiming to attract global investors with a total reward fund of $1 billion. For instance, companies can receive $5 million simply for completing a feasibility study. If they achieve a first-year output of 5,000 tons, they earn an additional $100 million. Those that build a complete local supply chain, from mining to magnet manufacturing, can receive up to $500 million in incentives. These rewards are directly tied to local processing rates, signaling that Brazil doesn't just want to be a raw material exporter. It wants to become a full-scale producer, mastering mining, refining, and manufacturing by 2028. Naturally, this ambitious plan has drawn global attention. As countries like Australia and Canada seek to build so-called de-China-ized supply chains, Brazil has quickly emerged as a prime target, and the United States was among the first to show interest. In fact, Western capital had already been eyeing Brazil's rare earth resources for quite some time. Back in January 2023, Vision Blue Resources invested $150 million in Brazil's Serra Verde mine, operated by Denham Capital. The project's goal is to make Serra Verde the third large-scale rare earth producer outside China, and the world's first independent supplier of the four key magnetic elements, praseodymium, neodymium, terbium, and dysprosium. At the time, this was hailed as a landmark move, signaling the West's determination to build a large-scale de-China-ized rare earth supply chain. Soon after, in February 2024, the U.S. company Energy Fuels Inc. acquired 17 mineral concessions in Bahia, Brazil, covering over 15,000 hectares. This heavy mineral sand deposit is expected to supply between 3,000 and 10,000 tons of natural monazite concentrate annually to Energy Fuels' Utah facility, where it can be refined into high-value materials like permanent magnets and precision glass. Researchers also discovered thorium byproducts in the area, a potentially valuable fuel for next-generation nuclear energy systems, adding further strategic importance to the site. Alongside these major ventures, smaller companies have also been forming partnerships with local Brazilian firms. Altogether, it seemed the U.S. was close to successfully building a rare earth supply chain centered on Brazil, but honestly, few anticipated that with Donald Trump's return to office, this plan would collapse almost entirely. After taking office again, Trump revived his America First approach and launched sweeping trade offensives, even against longtime U.S. partners. Brazil became one of his early targets. On July 30, 2025, Trump signed an executive order imposing a 40% tariff on Brazilian goods. Combined with the existing 10%, that pushed the total tariff rate to 50%. Officially, the move aimed to reduce America's trade deficit. Yet in reality, Brazil is not a country the U.S. runs a deficit with. In fact, America had an $18.3 billion trade surplus with Brazil in 2024, the highest in a decade. What's more, before the tariffs, the U.S. had repeatedly urged Brazil to include strategic minerals in trade negotiations. Given Brazil's top global ranking in rare earth reserves, many believe these tariffs were actually meant to pressure Brazil into compromising its resource sovereignty, helping the U.S. reduce reliance on China. Over the past few years, the two nations had been negotiating possible cooperation in rare earth development. Talks focused on how U.S. investment and technology could help Brazil efficiently develop and process its resources domestically. The United States has long been a major investor in Brazil's manufacturing, energy, agriculture, and service industries. But with these new tariffs, American companies face higher costs, from logistics to infrastructure, forcing some to consider scaling back or even leaving Brazil altogether. If the standoff continues, years of U.S. influence in Brazil could quickly evaporate. President Lula has already made his stance clear. Brazil's minerals belong to its people, and the country will never surrender its sovereignty under trade pressure. Instead, losing U.S. support could push Brazil closer to new partners, especially China. Indeed, Chinese firms have already begun forming deep partnerships with Brazil's mining industry. The Serra Verde mine has signed a long-term deal with Chinese companies to export most of its output to China through at least 2027. Around 30,000 tons of rare earth raw materials are expected to be shipped annually to China for processing, since China remains the only country in the world with a fully developed rare earth refining system. Moreover, in March this year, China Minmetals Corporation and Brazil's largest iron ore producer, Vale, jointly invested $450 million to build a rare earth industrial park in Brazil. The project is set for completion by 2026, with an expected output of 3,000 tons of praseodymium oxide annually. Of course, Brazil still hopes to eventually build its own complete rare earth value chain. But for now, exporting to China is the most practical and profitable path, providing steady revenue while also gaining access to Chinese technology and experience. It's important to remember that China still dominates the global rare earth industry, controlling around 90% of the world's refining and separation capacity, a lead built over decades. Its low-cost, fully integrated system is nearly impossible for other countries to replicate in the short term. So, for now, Brazil's cooperation with China seems to be the only realistic choice. To stay updated on future developments in this global power struggle, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We'll continue bringing you more in-depth and fascinating insights.